And so to tighten this up, what's the crack, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. In this video tonight, I'm going to show you how to do an oil and oil filter change on a 2005 or 2006 Kawasaki Ninja. I've got a track day coming up this weekend and I just want to refresh the oil and make sure she's good to go for another day out. So the first thing you're going to want to do is take your bike out for a ride and make sure the oil gets up to temperature. What happens then is the oil actually thins out and it makes it drain a lot easier out of the bottom of the engine. So I've already gone ahead and got my bike up to temperature. First thing I want to do when I'm back in the garage here is remove the lower fairing on the bike. There you can see the lower fairing on the bike. There's only 3 hex bolts on either side and you've got a couple of plastic fasteners underneath that need to be removed. So first things first, I've got my bike securely set up on the paddock stand again. I've got my hex bit back in the impact driver again because everything seems to be put together with hex on these bikes. It's also a good idea as well, if you have access to getting surgical gloves or nitrile gloves, go ahead and put those on. You don't really want to be getting too much oil on your hands. It's not really good for you long term either. So let's get started. I'm going to remove these first. Got 3 on this side. These are the plastic fasteners underneath the fairing. So you've got that one there. And you've got, should have 1, 2, 3, 4 underneath. So we've got 2 more hex bolts actually that I missed earlier. Got one just under here and another one here. This one's actually bolted onto the frame. This one is like bolted onto like a spacer bar that joins up with the fairing on the far side. Here we go. There's one half. And this is the bottom of the sump. So that's actually the sump nut there. We need to undo that and let the oil drain out from there. I've got a couple of these containers left over from last Christmas that I always use. It's always really handy because they're quite shallow. You don't have to get a bike or a car too high off the ground if you want to fill them up with oil. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that now. I've got my ratchet and 17mm socket. Here we go. Let's keep a rag handy. Okay, so while that oil drains out, I'm just going to go ahead and get a new copper washer and stick it on the sump plug nut just to keep things nice and fresh, and also make sure that there's a good seal for the next time. I'll go ahead and reattach this. So to tighten the sump nut, you want to make sure that you use a torque wrench to make sure that you get it to the right torque spec. It's 29 Newton meters, and I've got mine adjusted to that, so I'm going to give it a little squeeze now. Okay, so and the next part now is to move on to remove the oil filter. Now I've got a special oil filter removal cap here. Out my new filter. You can see the rim here, the rubber seal is actually already greased up nicely. So another thing as well, what I usually do is I try and take some of the fresh oil and just rub a seal of it around the outside there. It just makes it a little bit easier to get the oil filter off the next time round. So the oil filter does actually absorb the oil, so just fill it up and then give it a little bit of time to settle. Okay, so I think that's enough. Now I'm going to go ahead and fit it back to the bike. Just gave the filter housing just a nice little wipe down. Now we're ready to screw on the new one. Okay, so I'm just going to reverse the steps once again. I'm going to go ahead and fit the filter socket back on, like that. So the manuals online actually say to torque it to about 31 Newton meters. It seems a little bit excessive to me, so I've gone down and torqued it to about 20, which I think is more than enough. Alright, so that's actually all the hard stuff done. Now all I've got to do is go ahead and fill the bike with oil. It says in the manual to use about 3.4 litres when you're doing an oil and filter change. However, I've noticed in the past that sometimes there's always a little bit of oil left in the engine. So what I like to do is maybe put in about 3 litres, leave it for a little while, come back and see if it's in the window, and just slowly top it up from there in increments. So I've got my funnel here and I've got my new oil here as well, so let's go and fill it up. Alright, so I've just gone ahead and put in 3 litres into the engine. I can see that the oil is starting to creep up on the inspection window on the side of the sump there. So normally what I would do now is go ahead and turn on the bike and crank it over, let it run for a couple of seconds and then shut it off. What that does is it allows the oil to travel through the oil filter and all the various oil galleries in the engine. So it'll help you give a proper true reading. But because it's getting pretty late here now, I'm going to leave that and I'll come back to it in the morning. Alrighty guys, so it is actually in fact the next day here. The oil level is just below the low mark, so I'm just going to crank it up, let it run for a couple of seconds, knock it off, and then let it settle, so then I can top up the level then once more. Okay, so that should be enough to allow the oil travel through the galleries and through the filter and get up to the top of the engine. So once it falls back down again, then we'll be able to take a true reading. Right guys, so looks like the hard work here is done. Now what I'm going to do while I'm letting that settle again, I'm going to go ahead and I can put the rest of the bike back together. Alrighty guys, so we've got the fairing back on, and just the last thing we need to do is just start the bike up again, let it run for a couple of minutes and just check it over, make sure there's no fluids leaking or anything like that. That's going to be a wrap for this one guys. I hope you found it helpful and you can do the job yourself, no problem. So hit me up in the comments if you have any questions, or I'd also appreciate if you wanted to subscribe or like the video, and we'll see you in the next one guys. Thanks.